Hello, my cosmic baddies, my friends. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome back to Chakras and Cusswords podcast. Today, we are going to talk about Chiron, the wounded healer, the myth, the legend, the area of that wounded warrior, that little asteroid, that planet. This is part of the astrology series. So if you haven't tapped into the astrology series playlist on YouTube for the whole series in chronological order, I highly recommend that you head on over there and check it out. So today we're going to talk about Chiron, why Chiron is so important in the birth chart, the reason why people even look at Chiron, and the overall emphasis of how we can use Chiron to grow as an individual. So, first off, let's have a little introduction of Chiron. Chiron is often referred to as the wounded healer. It was discovered in 1977. Chiron is classified as both a minor planet and a comet. It's small. It's not necessarily a big planet, so it's considered a minor planet, but it's not considered a dwarf planet like Pluto, orbiting between both Saturn and Uranus. So it's definitely a smaller beam, but it does have great energy and potential, especially in astrology. Chiron's significance in astrology stems from the area of mythology and the areas of roots. And Chiron was named after the centaur Chiron in Greek mythology, who was wise and also a immortal healer. So just kind of like knowing the background of what Chiron is all about, the fact that he was immortal lets you know that he's a little bit different, right? All these Greek mythology and gods, all these characters, all these key players all have this area of immortality, right? So that's why we see them almost as gods. But unfortunately for Chiron, while he was a healer, there was one individual he could not heal, and that was himself. And when we are in our healing journey, one of the most important things is being able to heal, being able to move past certain traumas and move a little bit wiser, a little bit more knowledgeable, a little bit more stronger in certain situations, especially after we've come over great obstacles. And while we might have our scars, our wounds, our trauma, we have to take in that area of strength to continue on with the cycle. Just like the zodiac cycle, just like the cycle of life, just like the cycle of movement. Chiron represents our deepest wounds and our capacity to heal others through our experiences with these wounds that we've experienced. In the natal chart, Chiron reveals where there have been power struggles, where there has been a result of wounds, trauma, something that has really made a significance in that individual's life. It reveals where healing powers are as results as our spiritual inner strength, our spiritual wounds, getting past them. The interpretation of Chiron in the natal chart is basically the characteristics of healing, of the wounds, and the area of life where the deep wounds, both physical and emotional, play out in our everyday life. So this doesn't necessarily have to be a physical wound. It could be both. Like, for instance, let's say you were in a traumatic car accident. We might see that energy kind of show in the chart because, in all honesty, a traumatic event in one's life will show up on an emotional state and also a physical state. Even if it didn't directly affect that individual physically. So for instance, maybe a loss of a loved one will still show some elements of a physical impact on the other, even though they were not physically directly harmed, just because the emotional stance and the physical stance correlate so well together in areas of life, the individual. We often see this, right? People who are under large amounts of stress or traumatic experiences will show it on a physical manner, not just on a emotional manner. It is the internal and the external meeting together as one in this area of the spirit of the soul. These are often areas where we may be feeling inadequate in this certain experience, or even we might be feeling large amounts of pain. Our healing journey, we know we can learn to heal these wounds over time, but it's also a struggle. It's an experience that sometimes feels very rough. But what Chiron shows us is that our experiences somehow help others. The empathy and compassion is really the end product of Chiron, even though it feels very significant in the areas of wounds and the area of trauma. But getting to the empathy and compassion is the end result of going through these obstacles. Areas where we can develop significant empathy and compassion often is becoming the source of our strength and facing and even helping individuals who are going through some of the same processes or some of the same life experiences. When we look at Chiron in the signs of the houses, it definitely shows in certain areas of the individual. So let's just think about Chiron in the sign of certain celestial bodies, in the signs of certain zodiacs. So, for instance, Chiron in Aries, the wounds would be related to more of the self identity and maybe even possibilities of asserting yourself as the individual, that area of movement where it feels aligned in who you are. Having that area, we might see wounds that are related to that. Chiron in Taurus, the wounds might be related to self worth, security, material possessions. I would think somebody with Chiron and Taurus, there might have been financial struggles in their life, or they might have this area where they don't feel worthy of certain situations, of certain blessings, or certain accomplishments. Also, we have Chiron in Gemini, the wounds related to communications, maybe even the learning styles and the area of self expression. So take time to look to see where your Chiron is at in your chart and see if some of these things really kind of fall align with you in certain aspects of where your Chiron is. Chiron in Cancer, the wounds would be related to family, nurturing, and also the emotional state and stability and security. I might even see some feminine wounds, maybe even some wounds with the mother with a Chiron in Cancer. It would make me wonder, what was the feminine process like at the home? Chiron in Leo, I would definitely see some areas of wounds or some implication that maybe there was some limiting self beliefs towards creativity, self expression, and recognition. Maybe this individual has a hard time feeling confident in certain steps that they take. Chiron and Virgo, the wounds would be related to areas of perfectionism. We have to remember the Virgo, that energy of Mercury, loves to analyze. So if you had a Chiron in Virgo, there might be a time where you are definitely over analyzing, right? Overthinking. Also, we might see areas of service. The Virgo is also known for that domestication, that area of the healer, and even health. Like the overall health of the individual. Are there a lot of wounds towards a healthy living? Maybe this person grew up in a home where balancing health and understanding a healthy lifestyle was not a daily practice. Chiron and Libra, wounds related to the relationship, partnerships, and overall balance. A Chiron in Libra, I would definitely say there would be some wounds tied around the area of balance, also contracts and relationships. Chiron in Scorpio, the wounds are related to power, the power struggle of the individual, areas of control, deep and emotional bonds. Also, I would feel like there would be some wounds around intimacy, especially if the Chiron was in Scorpio in the eighth house. I would also think that there would be some areas where maybe this individual would have a hard time telling the truth. Maybe somebody kept secrets from them and then they decide the best way to protect others or protect their own self identity was to keep secrets from others. Chiron in Sagittarius, wounds related to areas of belief, maybe philosophy, or areas of expansion. I would also see that maybe the Chiron in Sagittarius would almost have a opposite effect as, let's say, something as a Mercury in Sagittarius. I would feel like a Chiron in Sagittarius, maybe they felt like they couldn't expand. Maybe they couldn't really take that area of freedom or higher learning. I would also think that a Chiron in Sagittarius might feel a little confined, where the freedom was conflicted. They always felt that somebody was controlling them. A Chiron in Capricorn, the wounds related to authority, ambition, and also the area of society. This would probably be somebody who definitely questioned authority, definitely maybe had some areas where they were hurt by a leader, they were hurt by somebody who was supposed to help them in areas of creating success or ambition, or maybe they were very let down. They had this area of let down. Chiron in Aquarius, wounds are probably related to the area of individuality. Maybe they don't necessarily like to seek on their true area of their uniqueness. Their area of uniqueness maybe feels a little confined. Maybe they were ridiculed for being a little different. Maybe they were ridiculed for being a little bit rebellious. Also, there might be wounds tied into the collective. Maybe there was some bullying. Maybe there was some areas of community almost traumatizing them, that area of society, the community. Maybe they lost their empathy. There might also be some wounds around innovation. Maybe they attempted to create their MySpace a long time ago, and for whatever reason, they had some areas of the big old internet playing tricks on them, right? Or there's just some areas where innovation feels almost pressed and it feels like they are not able to grow. Chiron and Pisces, the wounds would definitely be related to the area of the higher enlightenment, the area of spirituality. Also, we might see some area of compassion and boundaries being affected at this time with a Chiron in Aries. I definitely think that we look at the transition of where are the zodiacs, where is the Chiron within the zodiac wheel. We have to remember that the house placements are also important as well. So for instance, if let's say you had let's just go with a Chiron in, let's say you had a Chiron in the fourth house. I would definitely think that there was some areas of the home life, of the family, the areas of security would definitely arise. Let's say it was a Mercury in the fourth house, right? Aligned with the Chiron. So let's say it was a Mercury zodiac. So let's say it was, you had your Gemini, right? Your fourth house contained your Gemini, and that's where your Chiron laid. So I would think there would be some areas of communication conflicted with the area of security. Also, there might have been like a lot of screaming in the house. Also, let's give another one. Let's say you have your Libra, your Libra in the 11th house, and that's where your Chiron lays, I would definitely see that there would be struggles with relationships, especially with groups of friends, community, and partnerships. I would also see that there would be an area of maybe awareness of certain contracts, awareness of hurt in some elements. You aren't really able to balance it out, while the house is traditionally ruled by Aquarius, but this time the Chiron is with Libra. So there would be more of a disbalance with it, a misalignment with the area of the collective. So let's get into the transit and the progression. Chiron's transit and progression can trigger significant healing processes in our lives. When Chiron transits a sensitive point in our chart, it could bring up our intention to the unresolved wounds and encourage us to seek healing. These periods can be challenging and ultimately transformative. Another thing that I want to point out is when we look at the degree of where our Chiron rise, that has a significance. A lot of people say that there might be areas of trauma, there might be areas of deepest wounds right around that time of that individual's life, which is kind of interesting because my Chiron lays at 1 degree. And as many of you guys know, I did have open heart surgery as a child. So I did have an extremely traumatic event before I was 1 year of age. So I definitely think that that is true, that one of the things of our deepest wounds or impacts does have a significance in the energy of the degree of the Chiron. And when you look at people's Chiron's degrees, remember to look at it with an open mind and also to ask the individual what happened at this age, or if they haven't reached that degree yet. Maybe it was like a age, maybe they're like 20 and their Chiron is at 29. Maybe you could just ask them, what has been some of their fears, what has been some of their wounds, and kind of see if there was any life-changing significance towards growing older in life, to becoming more mature. When I always think about the critical degrees, like 29, I always feel like that's an energy of being very mature. That's an energy of transitioning over to the new process. So what has been holding them back from transitioning over to certain areas? What wounds have been holding them back? When an individual has wounded stems or wounded roots from the area of energy and from the area of symbolic movement, there is a mythological and symbolic association combined with the astrology and the interpretation of what happens to that individual and why astrologers believe that Chiron is so tied in to the wounded, to the energy of our deepest wounds. So some of the mythological roots that tie into it is Chiron was named after the wounded healer. Despite he was very strong and he had healing abilities, Chiron suffered many wounds from himself or from others that he could not heal. This myth forms the foundation in the astrological interpretation and symbolization of why Chiron has such a high significance of areas of pain and trauma within the chart. It is really the symbolic meaning that Chiron's story of the deep wounds has a potential for healing. The observation and the correlation that Chiron's position in the natal chart is an interpretation of what that individual has experienced. So it's something that you would ask questions about, definitely seek more knowledge. We have to remember when we are talking about people's deepest wounds, when we are talking about insecurities, challenges, and obstacles, it's something you should do with an ethical process. You shouldn't say, well, at the age of 29, I have a feeling like you're going to go through a divorce because your Chiron's in your 7th house. It's nothing like that, right? Or watch out for this backstabber. This is an area that needs compassion. It needs empathy. Most of the time, the individuals understand some of their own healing and some of their own areas of coming forward and talking to you about certain things that had a great impact on their life. It's not a time for you to take your intuitive astrological predictions to a all high, right? Unless you're Angeline Adams. But in all honesty, it's something that we want to help the individual learn their self in their own healing and growth, and definitely make sure there is an ethical process and a potential area where you still have the highest standards of morals and balance of an ethical practice. That is something that I struggle with when I look at the spiritual community and the areas of, I guess you could say, psychics, astrologers, is somewhere the ethics kind of, I don't know, diminish, maybe because we are talking about the metaphysical and it is seen as a philosophy with very, I guess you could say, low data. It's nothing that we can really prove in areas of data and science, but there is strong evidence and there is strong past practice that makes you feel that this area of Chiron in certain charts does have some true meaning. So Chiron not only represents the wounds, but it also the potential for healing and growth. And that's really what we want to help the individual see, is this dual aspect appeals to the human experience of overcoming difficulties and experiences. Using them as a source and strength with empathy and compassion is not only important to the individual that you are reading their chart for, but also for you. Understanding your Chiron is the first step. There's definitely that area of pain and the healing journey that can lead us to explore the roadmap of our personal development. So before you try to interpret somebody else's healing journey, please interpret yourselves, your own healing journey. The psychological reassurance and placement of Chiron interprets the lines of the concept of our deepest wounds. So that's why we also have to have self-help principles and compassion when we are talking about individuals' healings of past traumas and crucial personal development and growth. Empathy and service really needs to play out when we are looking at Chiron. Chiron's placement in the chart can significantly bring an individual the potential to become their own healer, to break the curse of the wounded warrior, to be able to move past some of these power struggles, some of these similar struggles and these obstacles that turned personal pain into an area of benefit. So definitely have this area of seeing Chiron as a valuable tool. It's not necessarily something that you're going to want to ridicule anybody over or, get them to talk about all of their past experiences. Allow that energy to really come forward. So here are some of the key aspects of Chiron's mythological presence in the background of storytelling. So birth and early life. The percentage that Chiron was the son of Titans, Kronos, and Saturn, and the nymph of Philyra. Unlike the others gods, he was definitely a little bit wild and unruly. Chiron was seen as wise, kind, and noble, even though he did come over with some of his own obstacles. The upbringing of Chiron, he was half horse, and he was half horse, half human, and this form, it almost like abandoned him. Despite this, he was adopted because he was abandoned by his true parents because of his form, because of the way he looked. So he was abandoned by his true parents and he was actually adopted. So we see that energy of identity. He was raised by the god Apollo, who taught him the various arts, including medicine, music, and areas of becoming a healer. Apollo's sister, Artemis, also contributed to his education. So the sister definitely played a strong role. Sometimes when I look at Chiron in the chart, you could kind of see where this individual goes as their profession. For instance, somebody who might have a Chiron in Virgo, I could definitely see them being like a healer, somebody who helps people with wellness. So there was definitely an upbringing with Chiron where he was seen as a mentor. Chiron became a renowned teacher, healer, and he basically was instructing a lot of the heroes and the gods. His pupils included Achilles, Hercules, Jason, Perseus, among others. He was known for wisdom and kindness and also having that nurturing heart to help the young kind of grow into their hero legacy. He used the healing arts as skilled medicine. He was even believed to have performed surgeries. He passed on his knowledge to his students and his mentors, especially Asclepius, the god of medicine. The wound, the accidental injury, despite his wisdom and healing abilities, Chiron suffered from a grave wound. During a scuffle with other centaurs, Hercules accidentally shot Chiron with a poisoned arrow coated with venom of Hydra. Being immortal, Chiron could not die from the wound, but also he could not heal it, leaving him in constant pain. The sacrifice was basically his overall agony. And I will definitely get into the story of Chiron. So the story of Chiron, and I will be releasing a meditation about Chiron, but the tale of Chiron, the wounded healer. In ancient realms where gods and immortals intertwined, there was a being unlike any other, Chiron, born from the union of the Titans of the Kronos and the sea of nymph, Philra, entered the world with the body of a horse and a torso of a man. Philra was shocked and ashamed of the unusual offspring. She abandoned Chiron. However, this creature was destined for greatness. In the early years, played a significant life of who Chiron became. Chiron's early years were spent in solitude, wandering the forest and the mountains. He took a turn when the god Apollo, the divine archer and healer, founded him. Apollo recognized the spark of potential in this young centaur. He took him under his wing, alongside with his sister Artemis. Apollo taught Chiron the arts of medicine, music, archery, prophecy. Chiron absorbed this wisdom with the impression that even impacted the gods. The mentor to the heroes, Chiron became a renowned teacher, spread far and wide. Many people heard of Chiron. His cave of his abilities became a sanctuary of learning for many future heroes such as Achilles. Achilles, swift of foot, learned the art of war from Chiron. Asclepius, who would later become the god of medicine, absorbed his healing knowledge from Chiron. Jason, destined to lead the Argonauts, and the Perseus, the slayer of Medusa, were also among one of his pupils. Under the guidance of Chiron, they honored their skill and learned the values of wisdom, courage, and compassion. The wound. Despite his vast knowledge and skill, Chiron's life took a tragic turn one day. Hercules, the mighty son of Zeus, and one of Chiron's former students, visit his old mentor. During their meeting, a group of wild centaurs attacked, In the chaos, Hercules accidentally struck Chiron with an arrow tipped with deadly venom of Hydra. The poison caused excruciating pain that even Chiron, with all his knowledge, could not heal. The sacrifice, the immortal and unable to die from the wound, Chiron faced an eternity of suffering. In his agony, he made a noble decision. Prometheus, the Titan who had been condemned to eternal torment for giving fire to humanity, could be freed if someone took his place. Chiron, driven by compassion and desire to end his pain, offered this immortality to Zeus in exchange of Prometheus's freedom. Zeus, moved by Chiron's selfishness, and granted him his wish. Chiron was then released among the stars. Among the stars, released from his pain, Chiron ascended to the heavens. Zeus placed him from the highest stars, the stars as the constellation of the centaurs, honoring his sacrifices and immortalizing his wisdom. The celestial dome, Chiron watched over the earth, continuing to inspire and guide others who looked into the stars for wisdom. The legacy of the wounded healer. Chiron's legacy has lived on not just in the stars, but in the hearts and minds of those he has touched. His life has embodied the paradox of the wounded healer, one being wounded but also the healer, a being who, through his own suffering, gained a profound ability to heal and teach others. His story reminds us that our deepest wounds can be the source of our greatest strengths, and through the empathy of sacrifice, we can transform our pain into wisdom. As the tale of Chiron, the noble centaur who turned his wisdom into healing, light endures as a beacon of hope and transformation. He has inspired generations in the areas of myth, legends, and storytelling. So there has been this archetype of the wounded healer, not just only through Chiron, but also similar Chiron beings in areas of mythology. These figures often symbolizes the theme of suffering, healing, and wisdom, and the area of transformation. Some of these wisdoms of great stories of the past actually will have a familiar tune to many of us. And here are some of the different cultures that celebrate this energy. The Norse mythology of Odin. Odin is the chief of the Norse gods. Odin is a representation of the wounded healer. In his quest of wisdom, Odin sacrificed one of his eyes at Miriam's well-gained immense knowledge. He also endured 9 nights hanging from Yggdrasil, the world tree, wounded by his own spear, to learn the secrets of the ruins, which he then shadowed with humanity. Odin's willingness to suffer for the sake of the wisdom to help others reflects the wounded healer's archetype. The Hindu mythology. Dhanvantari, the Hindu god of medicine and the avatar of Vishnu. Dhanvantari emerged during the churning of the ocean's milk with a pot of amrita, which is an elixir, a serum of immortality, almost like the water or the forbidden fruits of immortality, right? And the knowledge of Ayurveda. While he himself is not seen as wounded, his role as a healer is divine in the knowledge of medicine, aligned with the area of aspects that Chiron brings. Bhishma, although not a deity, Bhishma from the Mahabharata could be seen as a Chiron-like entity or archetype. He took a vow to celibacy and faced numerous challenges for greater good for his family and the kingdom. During the Kurukshetra War, he fatally was wounded and laid on a bed of arrows, inspiring wisdom to his descendants until he chose to die. The Native American mythology of the wounded healer archetype or concept comes from the shamanic traditions. In Native American cultures, shamans or medicine men or women often undergo intense personal suffering or illness, which it initiates them to their own roles as healers. This suffering grants them the ability to connect to the spiritual realm and gain the power to heal others, closely mirroring the Chiron archetype. And I will say that somebody who has had areas of suffering, emotional, physical, and areas of personal balance, I do feel that when you have gone through obstacles, sometimes sharing your story helps others, and it also helps you as well. The Greek mythology of Prometheus. While not a healer in traditional sense, Prometheus shares Chiron's themes of sacrifice and suffering for the benefit of others. Prometheus stole the fire from the gods and gave it to humanity, enabling progression and enabling the area of civilization. As a punishment, he was bonded to the rock where the eagle would eat his liver daily, only to regenerate each night. His enduring torment for the sake of human advancement parallels the suffering and the sacrifice aspect of Chiron. And remember, Chiron created that area of truce so Prometheus could be free from his punishment. And he then became immortal in the sky of the celestial gods. Christian tradition would you be Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ in Christian theology. Jesus Christ is often seen as the wounded healer. He endured suffering and the crucifixion to atone to his sins of humanity, offering salvation and healing to all. His wounds and resurrection symbolizes the ultimate transformation and power of healing through sacrifice. And many times people say, Jesus sacrificed his life for us. He saved us. The Celtic mythology, the Fisher King. The Fisher King in Arthurian legend. The Fisher King is a guardian of the Holy Grail who suffers from the wound that will not heal. His kingdom suffers as a result of his injuries. The only finding of the Grail and pure-hearted quester can heal him and restore the land. This story emphasizes the connection between the ruler's health and the land being well, echoing the era of Chiron, the wounded healer himself. So those are some examples of the energy of the wounded healer. Just remember, when we are looking at the legacy of Chiron, Chiron's legacy is not just in the stars, but it's in the center of here now on this earth. He embodies that area of wisdom, strength, sacrifice, and transformation. So when you are going through the charts, remember to always use compassion, enlightenment, and areas of empathy. And of course, ethics. So I want to thank you guys for listening to this podcast, and everybody have an amazing day. Let me know how you see your Chiron in the comments below. How does your Chiron stand out? Is there a correlation between your healing journey and where your Chiron is placed? Let's talk about it. Have a great day, guys. Bye.